The cold night that changed everything. The night air carried the scent of rain-soaked asphalt, mixing with the faint aroma of gasoline and exhaust fumes. It was a typical late evening in Los Angeles, the city's hum never truly ceasing, only dimming as the hours dragged on. At the edge of a quiet street, beneath flickering neon lights, a small gas station stood, a beacon of convenience for those passing through and a lifeline for one exhausted woman who had no choice but to endure. Emily Parker, 7 months pregnant, moved briskly between the pumps, her steps purposeful yet weary. The chill seeped through the thin fabric of her worn-out work uniform, but she ignored it. She had learned to ignore discomfort a long time ago. With practiced efficiency, she cleaned windshields, filled gas tanks, and assisted customers who barely acknowledged her presence. To them, she was just another worker. To her daughter, Sophia, she was the entire world. Under the station's awning, Sophia sat curled up in a plastic chair, her tiny fingers wrapped around a dull red pencil as she sketched in an old, crumpled notebook. Her face, partially obscured by strands of chestnut hair, was the image of quiet concentration. She didn't complain about waiting for her mother during these late shifts. She knew better than to burden her mother with more worries. It had been nearly a year since Emily's husband had walked out on them, the moment he discovered she was pregnant again. His words still haunted her. "I can barely afford one kid, Emily." A second. "I can't do this. I won't do this." And then he was gone. Now, Emily worked multiple shifts, stretching every dollar to cover rent, food, and whatever small joys she could afford for Sophia. There was no time to dwell on exhaustion or heartbreak. She had to keep going. Just as she finished wiping the windshield of an old sedan, the low rumble of an approaching motorcycle caught her attention. She barely spared it a glance, just another customer. But when the motorcycle came to a smooth stop at Pump 5, something about the rider's effortless movements, the way he stepped off his bike with quiet grace, made her pause for just a second. Dressed in a black leather jacket and dark jeans, the man removed his helmet, revealing damp, slightly tousled hair and a face that was unmistakably familiar. Emily blinked, disbelief washing over her exhaustion. Keanu Reeves. He had the kind of presence that made people stop and take a second look, but it wasn't because of fame or fortune. It was because of something else. A quiet, unspoken kindness that seemed to radiate from him. He glanced around, taking in the scene. The nearly empty station, the flickering sign overhead, the young woman working tirelessly despite the evident strain on her body. Then his gaze landed on Sophia. Emily followed his line of sight. Her daughter, unaware of the watchful eyes on her, was still lost in her drawings. The page before her was filled with careful strokes, a delicate sketch of what looked like a small restaurant, complete with steaming plates of food and a handwritten sign above the entrance. Keanu stepped closer, intrigued. "You like to draw?" he asked gently. Sophia's head snapped up. Her large brown eyes flickered with surprise as she registered the man before her. She nodded shyly, gripping her pencil a little tighter. "What's this?" Keanu crouched slightly, tilting his head to study the drawing. Sophia hesitated before answering, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's a restaurant." He smiled. "Your favorite place to eat?" She shook her head. "It's where I want to go. Someday." Keanu's gaze softened. "A restaurant you want to visit." Sophia hesitated again, then quietly corrected him. "A restaurant Mama wants to have." Emily, who had been standing nearby, quickly stepped forward. "Sophia, don't bother the gentleman," she said with a tired but polite smile. "She's not bothering me," Keanu replied, his voice warm but calm. He looked at Emily then, studying her the same way he had studied Sophia's drawing. There was something about her, something more than just exhaustion, a quiet resilience, a strength that came from necessity, not choice. Emily felt self-conscious under his gaze. She was used to being overlooked, not observed. Before she could say more, a car honked at the far pump, and she instinctively turned away. "Excuse me," she murmured, rushing back to work. Keanu watched as she moved, noting the stiffness in her steps, the way she pressed a hand to her lower back, her swollen belly straining against the fabric of her uniform. Then he looked back at Sofia. "What's your favorite thing your mom cooks?" he asked. Sofia's face lit up, a contrast to the quiet, reserved child she had been moments ago. "Lasagna. It's the best in the world." Keanu chuckled. "That good, huh?" Sofia nodded eagerly. "Mama says her grandma taught her. But she doesn't cook much now. She's always working." There was something about the way Sofia said it, matter-of-factly, with no bitterness, just an understanding beyond her years. A child who had learned early that life wasn't always fair. Keanu looked over at Emily again. He had met plenty of people in his life. Some good, some not, but something about this woman, this little girl, made him pause. He knew what struggle looked like. And he knew what it meant to want something more, to dream of something bigger, even when life had other plans. As he filled his motorcycle's tank, his mind was already turning, considering possibilities. He didn't know exactly what he would do yet, but he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't going to just drive away and forget this moment. Because some people crossed your path for a reason. And Emily Parker and her daughter were about to find out just how much one act of kindness could change everything. A quiet act of kindness that echoed forever. The gas station's dim lights flickered against the damp pavement as Keanu Reeves watched Emily rush from pump to pump, her exhaustion evident in the slight stiffness of her stride. Despite the weight of her pregnancy pressing against her frame, she moved with purpose, her hands steady, her voice unfaltering. She had long ago mastered the art of hiding her fatigue, because no one had time to care. No one stopped to ask if she was okay. Except tonight, someone did. Keanu stood near his bike, his hands in the pockets of his leather jacket, lost in thought. The exchange he had just witnessed between Emily and Sofia lingered in his mind. He had seen people struggle before, had met those who fought silently against the odds. But something about them, the mother who carried the world on her shoulders, and the daughter who saw a brighter future through the tip of a colored pencil, stirred something deep within him. He wasn't one to impose, but he wasn't one to turn away either. As he watched Emily wipe her hands on her apron, taking a moment to adjust the strap against her aching shoulder, an idea formed. Not a grand, sweeping gesture, not charity, just a small push. Keanu approached the small convenience store attached to the station, stepping inside. A bell chimed, announcing his entrance. The store was nearly empty except for the loan cashier, an older man who barely glanced up from his magazine. The aisles were lined with cheap snacks, bottled drinks, and household necessities. Things people grabbed in a hurry, never lingering long enough to notice the people behind the counter. Keanu grabbed a few items, some fruit, protein bars, and a warm fleece jacket from a clearance rack. As he approached the counter, his gaze drifted toward the back where a small section of school supplies sat gathering dust. His eyes landed on a box of colored pencils. He smiled. Grabbing the pencils, he paid for his items, offering a polite nod to the cashier before heading back outside. The rain had picked up slightly, a gentle drizzle that misted the pavement in a soft sheen. Emily was at the register now, counting out change for a customer. Her hands trembled slightly from the cold, but she kept her expression neutral, professional. Sofia was still in her plastic chair, her drawing now folded in half as she traced a new sketch onto the blank page. Her red pencil had worn down significantly, the tip barely visible. Keanu walked over, kneeling beside her. "Hey, Sofia," he said gently. She looked up, her big brown eyes filled with curiosity. He handed her the box of colored pencils. "Thought you might like these." Sofia's eyes widened in surprise, her small hands reaching for the box with an almost reverent touch. She traced her fingers over the packaging, as if making sure it was real. "For me," she whispered. Keanu nodded. "Yeah, I figured an artist like you could use some fresh supplies." Sophia's lower lip trembled, and before she could say anything, she lunged forward, wrapping her small arms around Keanu's neck in an impulsive hug. "Thank you," she murmured against his shoulder. Keanu chuckled, patting her back. "Anytime, kid." Emily, who had just finished with the customer, turned to see her daughter embracing a stranger. For a moment, panic flared in her chest, but as her gaze landed on the box of pencils in Sophia's hands, understanding settled in. Sophia pulled back, her eyes shining. "Mama, look." She held up the pencils proudly. Emily met Keanu's gaze, her lips parting as if to say something, but no words came. He simply offered a small smile. "She's got talent," he said. Emily swallowed, her throat tightening. "She does." A silence stretched between them, not awkward, but thick with unspoken words. Emily wasn't used to kindness from strangers. She had learned the hard way that people only helped when they expected something in return. Keanu seemed different. I appreciate it," she said finally, shifting her weight. "But you didn't have to." "I know," he interrupted gently, "but I wanted to." She studied him, searching for any sign of pity in his eyes. There was none, only sincerity. Sophia, oblivious to the moment between them, was already pulling out one of the new pencils, testing the vibrant colors on the edge of her notebook. Keanu hesitated, then pulled the fleece jacket from his bag. "Here," he said, handing it to Emily. "It's getting cold out." Emily stared at the jacket, her pride warring with her exhaustion. "I really can't." "It's not charity," Keanu said, reading her hesitation. "Just a warm jacket. That's all." For the first time that night, Emily let herself exhale. With careful hands, she took the jacket, running her fingers over the fabric. It was soft, warmer than anything she owned. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. Keanu nodded. "No problem." The sound of a honking car broke the moment, and Emily straightened, shoving the jacket under her arm. She turned to tend to the new customer, her mind racing. Keanu stood back, watching her for a moment before glancing at Sophia. "You keep drawing, okay?" he said. Sophia nodded enthusiastically. "I will." With one last look at Emily, Keanu turned and headed for his motorcycle. He had planned on leaving. He really had. But as he glanced back at the small gas station, at the mother and daughter who had unknowingly etched themselves into his thoughts, he knew this wasn't the end of their story. It was only the beginning. And tomorrow, he would return. Because something told him this wasn't just a chance encounter. It was fate. A promise worth keeping. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of damp pavement and fresh rain. The gas station stood in its usual quiet stillness, waiting for the city to wake. Inside, Emily Parker stacked supplies behind the counter, rubbing at the stiffness in her lower back. Her body ached from another long shift, but she had long since learned to ignore the discomfort. She had expected last night to fade into memory, just another evening of work and exhaustion. But something was different, a small, tangible difference. Sophia sat at the counter, a warm fleece jacket draped over her small shoulders, the one Keanu Reeves had given them the night before. She had worn it to bed, hugging it close like a security blanket, refusing to part with it. More than that, she had spent the entire night drawing with her new colored pencils, her little fingers never tiring. The spark in her eyes, the joy that had been dulled by struggle, had reignited. Emily had found herself watching her daughter as she worked, a knot forming in her throat. Keanu had done that. Not just with the pencils, not just with the jacket, but with something else. Hope. And Emily didn't know what to do with it. She had been let down too many times. It was easier to expect nothing. Easier to survive on what little she had than to wish for more. But now, there was a promise in the air, and it arrived just as she feared it wouldn't. The low, steady rumble of a motorcycle engine rolled down the street, growing louder as it pulled up to the gas station. Emily felt her heart skip. She turned slowly, wiping her hands on her apron, watching as Keanu stepped off his sleek black bike, the same casual confidence in his movements as the night before. His dark jacket was unzipped slightly, revealing a simple gray shirt underneath. He removed his helmet, shaking the dampness from its hair, his gaze sweeping across the station before landing on her. A knowing smile touched his lips. "You actually came back," Emily said before she could stop herself. Keanu chuckled, setting his helmet on his bike. "Told you I would." Emily crossed her arms, both wary and amused. "Most people don't keep their promises." Keanu tilted his head slightly, as if considering her words. "Most people aren't me." There was no arrogance in his tone, just quiet certainty. From behind the counter, Sophia let out an excited gasp and hopped off her chair, running toward Keanu with her sketchbook in hand. "Look, look, I made a new one." Keanu crouched as she reached him, letting her eagerly flip open the pages. She had drawn another restaurant, but this time it looked fuller, more detailed. There were tables filled with happy customers, a chef behind the counter who looked suspiciously like Emily, and a large sign above the entrance. "La Cucina della Nonna." Keanu read aloud, his pronunciation smooth but careful. Sophia grinned. "It means Grandma's Kitchen. Mama said if she ever had a restaurant, that's what she'd call it." Keanu glanced up at Emily, who stood frozen, caught between shock and something she wasn't ready to name. She hadn't said those words in years. She hadn't even realized Sophia had remembered. Keanu turned back to the sketch. "It's amazing, Sophia." She beamed, hugging the notebook to her chest. Emily cleared her throat, trying to compose herself. "Did you come here just to compliment my kids' drawings?" Keanu stood, slipping his hands into his pockets. "Nope." Emily waited, eyebrows raised. Keanu pulled a small envelope from his jacket pocket and set it on the counter. "What's this?" Emily asked, her voice guarded. "Rent." Emily's breath caught. "Excuse me." Keanu met her gaze. "It's 1 month's rent. No strings. No expectations. Just breathing room." Emily stared at the envelope, as if it might catch fire. Sophia looked between them, her young mind sensing the importance of the moment but not fully grasping it. Emily's fingers twitched, but she didn't move to take it. "I don't take handouts." Keanu nodded as if he had expected that answer. "Good, because it's not a handout. It's an investment." Emily narrowed her eyes. "In what exactly?" Keanu leaned on the counter, his expression thoughtful. "In you. In Sophia. In that dream she just showed me." Emily exhaled sharply, shaking her head. "You don't even know me." Keanu smiled. "I know enough." A long silence stretched between them. Keanu didn't push. He simply let the moment sit, allowing Emily to wrestle with her instincts, the part of her that had always fought for independence, that had learned to distrust good things because they never lasted. Finally, her fingers brushed the envelope, hesitating before picking it up. She turned it over in her hands, feeling its weight. 1 month's rent. 1 month where she wouldn't have to choose between food and electricity. 1 month where she could breathe. Her throat tightened. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice softer than before. Keanu exhaled, his expression unreadable for a moment. Then he said, simply, "Because I can." Emily searched his face, waiting for the catch. She didn't find one. For the first time in a long time, someone was helping her, just because they wanted to. She swallowed past the lump in her throat. "I don't know how to repay you." Keanu smirked. "Easy. Keep making the best lasagna in the world." A surprised laugh escaped Emily before she could stop it. Sophia giggled beside her. Keanu glanced down at the little girl. "And you. You keep drawing. I think the world needs to see what you can create." Sophia nodded eagerly. Keanu straightened, adjusting his jacket. "One more thing," he added, pulling a folded flyer from his pocket. He handed it to Emily. She unfolded it carefully, her eyes scanning the words. "Culinary course for single mothers. Sponsored enrollment available. Emily felt her pulse quicken. She looked up at Keanu, barely able to speak. This is real. Keanu nodded. They've got a spot open. I made a call. It's yours if you want it. Emily's grip on the paper tightened. Keanu watched her carefully. You don't have to decide now, he said. Just think about it. Emily didn't respond immediately. Her heart was pounding. For so long, she had buried her dreams beneath the weight of responsibility, beneath the struggle of making ends meet. But for the first time in years, it didn't seem so impossible. She looked at Keanu, at his quiet confidence, his unwavering belief in people, even in strangers like her, and something shifted. She didn't say thank you. Not yet. But she did something she hadn't done in a long, long time. She let herself hope. And in that moment, everything changed. The courage to begin again. The flyer trembled in Emily's hands, its crisp edges catching the gas station's fluorescent light. Culinary course for single mothers. Sponsored enrollment available. The words on the page held a promise she had long since abandoned, a life she had buried beneath exhaustion and necessity. For years, she had convinced herself that dreams were luxuries, not necessities. She had trained her mind to survive, to put one foot in front of the other, to focus only on the next paycheck, the next bill, the next meal. But now, staring at the simple flyer, she felt something foreign stir in her chest. Possibility. She had no idea what to do with it. Across the counter, Keanu watched her, patient and unreadable. He hadn't pressured her, hadn't tried to convince her. He had simply placed the opportunity before her and left the decision in her hands. And that terrified her. Because now she couldn't blame circumstance. She couldn't say it was never an option. Now she had to decide. Emily exhaled sharply, folding the flyer with careful precision before tucking it into her apron pocket. I don't know what to say. Keanu smiled, his expression warm but steady. You don't have to say anything yet. Sophia, who had been watching the exchange with barely contained excitement, suddenly piped up, Mama, are you gonna do it? Emily hesitated, looking at her daughter's hopeful face. She had spent so long making sure Sophia had what she needed, sacrificing, compromising, scraping by. But when had she last done something for herself? The thought unsettled her. I don't know yet, she admitted. Sophia's brows furrowed. But you love cooking, Mama. You always tell me stories about the food Grandma used to make. Emily smiled despite herself. It's not that simple, sweetheart. Why not? Sophia's little hands gripped her colored pencils tighter. You're the best cook in the world. Keanu chuckled softly. Sounds like a strong endorsement. Emily sighed, rubbing her forehead. It's not just about the cooking. It's about everything. Rent, work, taking care of Sophia, the baby on the way. Keanu leaned against the counter. The course isn't full-time. It's flexible. They work around schedules. And there's childcare provided during classes. Emily blinked. What? Keanu nodded. I wouldn't have suggested it if I thought it would make things harder for you. She opened her mouth to argue, but the words didn't come. It was almost too much, too easy. But wasn't that the point? Hadn't life always been too hard? Now, for once, there was a chance for something different. Emily swallowed. I need to think about it. Keanu didn't press her. He simply nodded. That's fair. She expected him to say more, but instead, he glanced at Sophia's sketchbook and changed the subject. How about we grab some food? I know a diner down the street that makes a decent breakfast. Emily frowned. You're asking us to breakfast. Not asking, Keanu said lightly. Telling. Sophia giggled, already grabbing her sketchbook. Mama, can we go? Emily hesitated. It had been so long since they had gone anywhere that wasn't work, school, or home. She had stopped thinking about things like going out for breakfast. It wasn't in the budget, wasn't practical. And yet, her stomach grumbled. Keanu smirked. That's a yes. Emily sighed, shaking her head with a reluctant smile. Fine. But if the food's bad, I'm blaming you. Keanu laughed. Fair deal. And just like that, the morning took a turn she never could have expected. A diner, a dream, and an unexpected conversation. The small diner was tucked into a quiet corner of the neighborhood, the kind of place that had been there for decades. The air smelled of coffee, fresh toast, and sizzling bacon, and the warm interior was a stark contrast to the cold drizzle outside. Keanu held the door open as Emily and Sophia stepped inside, shaking off the chill. They slid into a booth near the window, and a cheerful waitress with graying hair appeared moments later, pouring them coffee and taking their orders. Emily hesitated when it was her turn, her fingers brushing the laminated menu. Keanu noticed. It's on me, he said, as if reading her mind. Emily's first instinct was to refuse, but something about the way he said it, casual, without pity, without making it feel like charity, made her pause. Thank you, she said finally, softly. Keanu nodded, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. As the waitress walked away, Sophia started drawing on a napkin, completely in her own world. Keanu sipped his coffee, then leaned forward slightly. So, cooking. Emily raised an eyebrow. You're really not letting that go, huh? He grinned. Nope. She sighed, stirring her coffee. I used to dream about opening a restaurant. Keanu's expression didn't change. What stopped you? Emily exhaled slowly. Life. Life isn't an answer, Keanu said gently. Life is everything, but we still make choices. Emily shook her head. You don't get it. When you have a kid, when you have bills, when you're alone, it's not about what you want. It's about what you need to do to survive. Keanu was silent for a moment. Then he said something that made Emily freeze. I know what it's like to lose everything. Emily looked up, startled by the quiet intensity in his voice. Keanu met her gaze, his expression unreadable. I know what it's like to have dreams ripped away, to have plans change overnight, and I know how easy it is to get stuck in just surviving. Emily swallowed hard. She had read about his past, the losses he had endured, but hearing it from him, in that quiet, steady tone, made it real in a way that articles never could. Keanu took another sip of coffee. But you don't have to stay stuck. Emily exhaled shakily, staring down at the table. I don't even know if I'm good enough anymore, she admitted. I haven't cooked for real in years. Keanu set his coffee down. Then find out. Emily hesitated. Sophia looked up from her napkin drawing. Mama, I think you should do it. Emily turned to her daughter, surprised. Sophia smiled. Grandma always said cooking is how you make people happy. You should be happy too. Emily's heart clenched. She had spent years teaching Sophia how to be strong. Now her daughter was the one reminding her. Keanu's voice was quiet but firm. Take the class, Emily. Emily's fingers tightened around her coffee cup. This was it. The moment of choice. No excuses. No distractions. Just a question. Did she dare believe in something more? She looked at Sophia. Then at Keanu. And finally, she whispered, Okay. Keanu smiled. And just like that, her life changed forever. Stepping into the unknown. The words had barely left Emily's mouth before she regretted them. Okay. It had come out like a whisper, as if spoken too loudly. The universe might take it back. But Keanu heard it, and he smiled, not with excitement, not with triumph, but with the quiet confidence of someone who knew she had just changed the course of her own life. Emily's hands were still wrapped around her coffee cup, fingers trembling slightly. Across from her, Sophia beamed, her small hands clasped together, as if her mother had just said the most magical words in the world. The reality of it hit Emily like a wave. She had agreed. She had chosen. For the first time in years, she had allowed herself to say yes to something that wasn't just about survival. And now, the fear was creeping in. The excuses, The doubts. What if I fail? What if I'm not good enough anymore? What if this is a mistake? Keanu must have sensed it because he leaned forward slightly, his voice cutting through the storm brewing in her mind. You don't have to do this alone. Emily swallowed. What do you mean? He shrugged. I mean, I'll be around. Checking in. Making sure you're not backing out. Her brows furrowed. Why do you care so much? Keanu's gaze didn't waver. Because I've seen what happens when people give up on themselves. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle between them. And I don't want that for you. Emily exhaled sharply, looking away. The idea that someone, especially a stranger, believed in her enough to push her forward was almost too much to process. She had gotten so used to being invisible. Keanu leaned back, giving her space. Just take it one step at a time. The class starts next week. Emily nodded slowly. Next week. It sounded so soon. So terrifying. Yet, somewhere deep inside, buried under years of exhaustion and disappointment, there was something else. Excitement. The first day. The week passed in a blur. Emily spent her days at the gas station and her evenings convincing herself that she hadn't made a mistake. Keanu kept his promise. Every night, just before her shift ended, his motorcycle would roll into the station. He never stayed long, never hovered, never pressured her. He would simply walk up, ask how she was feeling about the class, and remind her that she was capable of more than she thought. It was infuriating and oddly reassuring. By the time Monday arrived, Emily felt like she had no choice but to go, if only to avoid the embarrassment of telling him she had chickened out. The class was held in a small but well-equipped kitchen space, designed specifically for culinary training. The moment Emily stepped inside, the familiar scent of fresh herbs, simmering sauces, and warm bread hit her like a memory. Her breath caught. It had been years since she had been in a kitchen that wasn't just for survival. Years since she had cooked for the love of it. A woman in her early 50s, wearing a chef's coat and a warm smile, approached her. You must be Emily. Emily nodded, gripping the strap of her worn-out purse. That's me. I'm Chef Daniela. Welcome to the program. The older woman studied her with a knowing look. Nervous? Emily exhaled. Terrified. Chef Daniela chuckled. Good. That means you care. Emily blinked. You think so? I know so. She gestured toward the kitchen. Come on, let's get started. Rediscovering the fire. The first hour was overwhelming. There were knives sharper than anything she had at home. Ingredients she hadn't worked with in years. Techniques she had once known but had long since buried under the monotony of gas station shifts and late-night ramen dinners. She almost bolted, almost convinced herself that this had been a mistake. But then, something happened. The moment her hands touched fresh dough, something inside her clicked. Kneading, stretching, shaping. It was muscle memory, a rhythm she had forgotten, but hadn't lost. The scent of garlic sizzling in olive oil pulled her back to childhood, back to the tiny kitchen, where her grandmother had taught her the secrets of a perfect sauce. As she stirred a pot of simmering tomatoes, tasting the balance of acidity and sweetness, a warmth spread through her chest. She remembered this. She loved this. By the time class ended, Emily was exhausted, but a different kind of exhausted. Not the soul-crushing weight of survival. Something else. Something that felt like purpose. A familiar motorcycle and an unexpected gift. When Emily stepped out of the building that evening, the sky was already dark. The air was cool, carrying the scent of rain that had fallen earlier in the day. And there, leaning casually against his motorcycle, was Keanu. Emily rolled her eyes, though she couldn't help the smile tugging at her lips. Do you ever go home? Keanu grinned. Not when there are important check-ins to do. Emily sighed, stepping closer. I didn't quit. I can see that. His gaze swept over her, taking in the slight flour dusting on her sleeves, the way her posture had shifted, less weighed down, more alive. How was it? he asked. Emily hesitated, then admitted, "I think I remembered why I loved cooking." Keanu's smile widened. "Told you." Emily huffed. "Okay, fine. You get one, I told you so." Keanu laughed, then reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small rectangular box. Emily frowned. "What's that?" He handed it to her. Curious, she opened it. Inside was a brand new chef's knife. Sleek, perfectly balanced, with her name engraved in small, elegant letters on the handle. Emily's breath caught. For a long moment, she just stared at it, unable to process what she was seeing. Finally, she looked up. "Why would you?" Keanu shrugged. "Every chef needs a good knife." Emotion clogged her throat. She swallowed hard, gripping the box tighter. "Thank you," she whispered. Keanu simply nodded. "You're gonna do great, Emily." For the first time in years, she believed it. And as she held the knife in her hands, something shifted inside her. This wasn't just a class. This wasn't just a kind stranger helping out. This was the start of something bigger, something she was finally ready for. Emily Parker was stepping into the unknown. And for the first time in a long time, she wasn't afraid. Rising from the ashes, the weeks passed in a whirlwind of flour-dusted hands, simmering sauces, and late-night study sessions at the kitchen table. Emily had stepped into the culinary course with hesitation, but now she was running toward it like a woman starved for something more than just survival. The gas station was still her reality, at least for now, but it was no longer her only reality. 2 nights a week, she left behind the harsh fluorescent lights and the smell of gasoline and stepped into a world that felt familiar and foreign all at once. And Keanu. He was there. Not every night, not hovering, but always present in small, steady ways. Sometimes it was a text checking in. "How's the sauce coming along?" Other times, it was showing up at the station with a bag of groceries that conveniently included the exact ingredients she had struggled to afford for her class assignments. And then there were the rare nights when he parked his bike outside the culinary school, waiting with an easy smile and a simple question. "So, what did you learn today?" Emily didn't know what to do with someone like him. Someone who didn't ask for anything in return. Someone who simply cared. It made her wary. It made her grateful. It made her wonder if, for the first time in her life, she was allowed to have something good. The test of fire. The smell of butter and garlic filled the air as Emily worked furiously, her hands moving with a grace she hadn't felt in years. Tonight was a test. A real one. Not in theory, not in practice, but in execution. Each student had been assigned a dish that would determine their progress. No instructions, no guidance, just them, the ingredients, and the fire. And Emily had been given lasagna. Of course she had. It was as if fate itself was daring her to rise to the challenge. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her mind. "Cooking is love, Emily. You taste the heart in every bite." Her fingers pressed into the dough, kneading it until it was smooth and pliable, rolling it out with precise movements. Layer by layer, she built something more than just a dish. She built a promise that she could do this, that she could be more than the woman who barely scraped by. As the lasagna baked, filling the kitchen with the scent of roasted tomatoes, melted cheese, and slow-cooked meat, Emily stepped back, wiping her hands on her apron. She glanced at the doorway. Keanu wasn't here tonight, but she wasn't disappointed. She didn't need him to be. Because tonight, for the first time, she was standing on her own. The unthinkable offer. 2 weeks later, Emily received an unexpected call. It was from Chef Daniela, her instructor. "I'd like to meet with you after class," the older woman said. Emily's stomach twisted with anxiety. Was she in trouble? Had she messed up? But when the class ended and she stepped into Daniela's office, she found the chef smiling. "Emily," Daniela said, folding her hands, "I have an opportunity for you." Emily blinked. Opportunity. Daniela nodded. There's a restaurant in the neighborhood that's looking for a kitchen assistant. It's not glamorous work, but it's real experience. And from what I've seen, you're ready. Emily's breath caught. A restaurant. A real one. Daniela confirmed, her eyes twinkling. Not a gas station. Not survival. A start. Emily's hands clenched in her lap. Her mind immediately went to the obstacles. She still had her gas station job. She still had Sofia. She still had bills. But she also had something she hadn't had before. Hope. Think about it, Daniela said, passing her a slip of paper with the restaurant's name and address. Emily looked down at it, her pulse racing. Could she really do this? Could she walk away from the life she had always known? A conversation under the neon lights. That night, as she walked home, she found Keanu waiting outside the gas station. He leaned against his bike, watching her with a knowing look. You've got news. Emily smirked. You're annoyingly perceptive. Keanu chuckled. I get that a lot. She exhaled and handed him the paper. I got offered a restaurant job. Keanu's eyebrows lifted in approval. That's amazing. I haven't taken it yet. His expression didn't change. Why not? Emily sighed, running a hand through her hair. Because it's scary. Because I'm used to jobs that I hate but can count on. This isn't certain. It could go wrong. I could fail. Keanu studied her for a long moment, then said, You've been failing for years, Emily. Her head snapped up, anger flashing through her. Excuse me. Keanu didn't flinch. Not in the way you think, he continued. You've been failing yourself. You've been telling yourself you don't deserve more. That you're stuck. That you don't get to dream. Emily swallowed, her chest tightening. Keanu stepped closer, his voice softer now. But you do get to dream, Emily. You do get to be more. A lump formed in her throat. She had spent so long fighting that she had never imagined what it would feel like to win. She looked down at the paper in her hands. Then she looked at Keanu. And she made a decision. The last day at the gas station, Emily's resignation was met with disbelief. Her manager scoffed. You really think you're gonna make it in some fancy kitchen? Emily smiled. I know I am. And for the first time, she believed it. That night, she locked up for the last time, stepping out into the cool evening air. Keanu was there, of course. But this time, she didn't roll her eyes. She just smiled. I did it, she whispered. Keanu grinned. Yeah, you did. Sofia ran up to them, beaming. Mama, are you gonna make lasagna every night now? Emily laughed, scooping her daughter into her arms. Not every night, but maybe once in a while. Keanu smirked. Guess I'll have to stop by for a taste. Emily raised an eyebrow. Oh, so now you're inviting yourself to dinner. Keanu shrugged. Hey, I made an investment in your career. I deserve some returns. Emily laughed. A real, full-bodied laugh. For the first time in years, she wasn't just surviving. She was living. And this was only the beginning. The dream that became reality. The smell of fresh herbs and simmering garlic filled the air as Emily stood in the small, bustling kitchen of La Cucina della Nonna, the restaurant that had once only existed in Sofia's sketchbook. But now it was real. A soft golden glow bathed the wooden tables, where customers laughed, shared meals, and created memories. Plates of pasta, rustic bread, and warm bowls of soup lined the counters, each dish infused with the love and passion she had carried in her heart for years. It hadn't happened overnight. It had been a fight against fear, against doubt, against the years of struggle that had convinced her she wasn't worthy of more. But she had won. And tonight was the grand opening. The restaurant was small, nothing extravagant, but it was hers. Emily stood at the counter, her fingers pressing against the smooth wooden surface, barely able to believe it. 2 years ago, she had been a woman lost in exhaustion, trapped in a cycle of endless shifts and empty dreams. Now she was here. And outside, through the glass window, she saw him. A debt that could never be repaid. Keanu Reeves stood across the street, his hands in the pockets of his leather jacket, watching the restaurant with a quiet smile. Emily smirked, shaking her head. She wiped her hands on her apron and stepped outside, letting the warm night air brush against her skin. She walked up to him, arms crossed. "You're just gonna stand there and stare," she teased. Keanu chuckled, taking it all in. Emily glanced back at the glowing sign above the entrance, the words La Cucina della Nonna shining softly against the night sky. "It's real," she murmured. Keanu nodded. "Told you it would be." Emily turned to him, her chest tightening with emotions too big to name. "You know," she said quietly, "I've been trying to figure out how to thank you." Keanu tilted his head. "You don't have to." "No," she insisted. "I do." She gestured toward the restaurant. This wouldn't have happened without you." Keanu studied her for a moment before shaking his head. "You're wrong." Emily frowned. "Excuse me." Keanu's voice was gentle but firm. "This happened because of you, because you had the courage to try." Emily swallowed past the lump in her throat. "You gave me a push," she whispered. Keanu smiled. "Maybe, but you were the one who took the first step." Silence stretched between them, thick with meaning. Finally, Emily exhaled, a small laugh escaping her lips. "You know, for a Hollywood star, you're really bad at taking credit." Keanu chuckled. "Yeah, I get that a lot." She shook her head, but her smile remained. Then she glanced at him, mischief twinkling in her eyes. "You know, since you did invest in my career, I guess that means you finally get your return." Keanu raised an eyebrow. "Oh." Emily nodded toward the restaurant. "Your table's waiting." For the first time, Keanu looked surprised. Then he grinned. "I'd be honored." A meal that was years in the making. The restaurant was warm, filled with the sounds of laughter, clinking glasses, and soft Italian music playing from an old radio near the kitchen. Keanu sat at a small corner table, his usual quiet presence somehow commanding attention despite his lack of effort. Sophia sat across from him, now 10 years old, grinning from ear to ear. "Okay, but you have to tell me your favorite food." Keanu smirked. "That's a tough one." Sophia leaned forward. "Come on." Keanu pretended to think. "All right. It's lasagna." Sophia gasped dramatically. "Mama." He chose lasagna. Emily appeared at the table, setting down a steaming plate of her grandmother's recipe. "Well, lucky for you, I make the best in the world." Keanu chuckled, picking up his fork. "I've been waiting a long time for this." Emily raised an eyebrow. "Better live up to the hype then." He took a bite. The moment the flavors hit his tongue, layers of perfectly cooked pasta, rich tomato sauce, creamy ricotta, and just the right balance of herbs, his expression changed. His eyes closed briefly as he savored it. Then he set his fork down and looked at Emily. "This," he said seriously, "is the best lasagna I've ever had." Emily laughed, relief washing over her. "Good, because I wasn't about to let you down after all this." Keanu shook his head. "You never could." She met his gaze, and in that moment, she realized something. This wasn't just about the food. It wasn't just about the restaurant. It was about everything it represented. A journey, a transformation, a life that had been rewritten not by fate, but by choice. Her choice. She had fought for this, and now she was living it. She wasn't just Emily Parker, the exhausted gas station worker anymore. She was Emily Parker, chef and restaurant owner. And sitting across from her, the man who had given her that first push took another bite of lasagna, smiling like he had always known she was meant for more. Because she was. Because she always had been. And as the warmth of the restaurant wrapped around her, as Sophia giggled beside her, as the laughter of customers filled the air, Emily finally let herself believe it. She had made it. And this This was only the beginning.